Hello and welcome to a bit of a damp and drizzly day here in beautiful Nova Scotia. Welcome to my channel, The Optimistic Gardener. My name is Steve Farley. So, welcome indeed. It's a bit of a damp, drizzly, cold day here in Nova Scotia. April mid, what we are, just gone past mid-April, nearing my birthday on the 22nd of April. And all around me, as you can see, there are signs of spring growth. The lupins are popping up in my new border here, and we've got poppies coming up and all sorts of different things starting to grow now. Now the ground is warming up and obviously the air temperature is warming up. The longer days, all helping to get all your different plants firing up ready for a new summer of growth. But also weeds, etc. are popping up as well. So I'm taking today to clean up some of my borders, and I've got 5 tips for you guys to help you ensure that your borders are in tip-top condition, ready for a bumper harvest, we'll say, of flowers and beautiful growth on your different plants throughout this year. And if you take on board these tips and do a few of them, they'll help you no end. So what's the first thing? Well, I've got the border there. One of the things that I don't do anymore in the autumn time is clear away all the dead growth. I like to leave that for the little plants and your organisms of the garden to sort of overwinter, and somewhere for them to sort of a bit of a hotel during the inhospitable days of winter. So I leave all that sort of stuff there, all the old growth, things that have fallen down. I leave it for these animals. Oh, there's the boy going past. I leave it for the animals over winter, and then as it sort of starts to warm up and I start to see growth of the plants, the new growth of the plants, then I think about, right, okay, now I can clear away the old detritus and start to see what's there. So the first tip is clear away all the old growth from the garden and from the different plants around your border. So let's have a look at that now, shall we? So here's a good example of cutting away all this sort of old growth. Got this nice grass here. Now, believe it or not, it did provide me some nice structure over the winter before it got bashed about too much. But now the green is starting to grow through nicely here, so time to cut it all back and give the new growth the chance to grow through. Now, with this type of grass, can't remember exactly what it's called, we don't want to cut into the new growth, so just cut the old growth back first of all to just above the new growth, so we can see the new growth coming through. All this outside stuff, scruffy stuff, pull that away. So this is an example of your deciduous type grass, and you always just cut that back, the old growth back, to just above, so that you're not cutting into the new growth. Whereas your other type of grass, you don't cut that back so much, you run your fingers through it and that pulls out some of the old growth. But this stuff here, your big sort of grasses, deciduous, you want to cut them back. When I've got a bit more time, I'll probably come back and see if I can cut a few of these more individual bits out. But really, that is all you need. Now already, by cutting this back, I don't know if you can see, there's some weeds here I've seen now. There's some angelica that's sown itself in that I'm probably not going to want all of these around here. So I've already now can see some of the growth that I don't want. So there we go. Carry on that all around the border with the old lupins, all of that sort of stuff, the asters, and I'll soon have a good view of around the border. So that is the border now generally cleared of the old debris and growth from last year. All the, lots of the old leaves, etc. Now, we don't want to spend all day on this, we want to make sure we have a nice clear area, clear each of your plants, but let's not do it to the nth degree. Now I can see all the different places where there's weeds come up, etc. And I'm going to go all around the bed now and get rid of any of the sort of weeds that I can see. And that's my next stage. So we've cleared the old growth, got rid of the weeds. Things are starting to look a bit clearer now, starting to look a bit tidier. What about all the plants that are reseeding themselves and popping up around the place and starting to take over themselves? Some of these plants, like Angelica, can be thuggish if you don't keep on top of them. So what about moving some of those extra plants around to another place in the garden, like lupins, etc. What else have we got? The foxgloves. All the foxglove, as you can see over there, they've reseeded themselves lots of places in and around there. I don't want them all in one place, and I've got this brand new border here, got brand new borders in the orchard, so I can move some of these lupins, some of the Angelica, all of that different stuff that I don't want in these beds taking over. Let's move them free plants now into different positions around the garden. Let's have a look at that, shall we? So that's the majority of the weeds, at least the ones I can see now, got rid of in the bed, so that's a good start for spring. As I said, now I'm going to be looking at moving some of the plants that have come up, like the lupins and these Aquilegia here, that sort of self-seed quite freely, that I don't particularly want in the positions they're in right now. And these lupins in particular, I'm fancying a sort of a river of lupins to flow through the border. So I can move some of these now into some nice positions where I get that flow of the lupins all the way through. And like the Aquilegia pops up everywhere, so I'm going to move that around. I'm going to move some to some other borders. So generally just a quick move of the ones, and especially as you can see, the foxgloves have self-seeded everywhere, so I'm definitely going to move them, but now's the chance to do that. I'm literally just going to dig these up. They're tough old plants, or tough young plants anyway. She's got quite a good root on it now. Sorry, that lupin got quite a good root on it now. The Aquilegia, I'm going to move to a completely different border. I'll leave that lupin there. So here's a perfect little example of a couple of plants that are seeding themselves that I'd like to keep, but not exactly where they are, especially not close up together like that. In fact, there's three. There's a Aquilegia as well. In fact, the Aquilegia I can just get rid of, but the other two, I'm going to dig them out and plant them up somewhere else. So they're pretty tough plants. Look, there's even some weeds in there, some grass. So let's have a look how we can separate this. There we are. So plant that up. I can't remember what this one is called actually, but well, there's three. So there's a foxglove, whatever that is, I can't remember, and another little foxglove. Plant that up somewhere nice. So sort of related to moving your plants around. Number 4, some of your plants, some of the herbaceous plants, like maybe the daylilies or some of, what else have I got there? Asters I've got there. Starting to get a bit big now. Starting to maybe, as herbaceous perennials do, they'll start to get bigger and the growth around the outside is quite a lot. But inside, there'll be a sort of hollow bit as they start to get older and get bigger. Let's get them out of the ground and we can divide them up. So dividing your herbaceous perennials is a great way of gaining extra plants and rejuvenating the plants that you've got there. So I'm going to take a couple of those asters now, split them up and move them again to another place in the garden. So I've got some free plants. Let's have a look, shall we? So here I've got an aster that I am going to divide. Now most of your herbaceous perennials you can divide quite easily, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to dig round it, lever it up, and then I'm going to split it down the middle. Maybe even make 3, but we'll dig it up first and then we'll see how big it is and whether I can split it into 2 or 3. So I'm going to dig all the way around the outside. That was pretty simple. Get rid of this dead growth. So that's a pretty good clump there, and I could probably make 3 or 4 different plants out of that. I'm just going to go and get my other spade. So all I'm going to do here is get the spade down the centre. See how this, so that's quite tough. So give that a good. Oh. There we go. See, that's got a pretty tough fibrous root system there. Now, I think I'm definitely going to go again. So down the middle, at the quarter. There we go. 4 for the price of 1. Obviously they're smaller, but they will very quickly regain their vigour, and I'm actually going to move these somewhere else. So there we are. division on the majority of your herbaceous perennials. Really easy, great way of increasing your plants. Obviously, bit of a bonus one here, or should I say one that I forgot when I was doing the 5 different things for your border, because obviously you've got plants to move in. Now this is a bit early, I feel, for actually introducing new plants. Maybe you know, some herbaceous perennials you can get in there, but you've got all the summer bulbs and things like that. I'm not going to plant them just yet. I'm going to wait another couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks here in Nova Scotia, because the last frost date isn't until possibly June. So things like dahlias, etc., I'm leaving them in the greenhouse at the moment, and I won't be planting them up yet. But that's a good thing to be thinking about. Are you going to be introducing new plants in to your area? But last but not least, number 5 on the list. So let's go through the list again. Number 1, we've cleared all the old growth. Then number 2, we've got rid of those weeds that were hiding underneath all that old growth. Number 3, we've moved some of our plants that we don't, you know, that have reseeded themselves, moved them into new areas or just got rid of them on the compost heap. Number 4, divided some of our herbaceous perennials, and again, you can keep them in the same place or move them around to different places in the garden. Number 5, mulch your beds. Massively important, I feel, to mulch your beds, whether it be with some compost from your compost heap, some leaf mould, all sorts of different things, bark if you want to use that sort of stuff. But a good mulch on your beds is going to lock in the moisture that is you know, is coming down obviously at this time of year with lots more rain. Lock that moisture in. It's going to stop the weeds, or cut down on weeds growing in your bed, and as it breaks down, it's going to provide a nice bit of feed to the soil itself, not to your plants. It's going to feed the microorganisms that are in your beds and all the different fungi, etc., and they will in turn feed your plants, and the plants will help and feed them as well. That sort of symbiotic relationship between your plants and the microorganisms in the actual bed themselves will be helped by having that mulch and it breaking down. I'm using a bit of a rough mix of a bit of rough compost and some leaf mould. The reason it's rough compost is I've used all my sort of better graded stuff for the veg beds, and there's one thing you never have enough in the garden, and that's compost. So this is good. This will rot down nicely, provide a nice bit of shade, lock in that moisture, all the things I said, and I'm just going to lay that quite thickly, a couple of inches, all around the plants there. I'm using this side bed rather than the bed I was showing you on, because it's smaller, and the wind's getting up a bit. Anyway, let's get amongst it. So we'll have this nice and thick, and this will suppress the weeds, lock in the moisture and rot down nicely, feeding the soil. So there we go, bed all done. So I've got rid of the old stuff, weeded it out, moved some plants that I didn't want there, divided some, and there's the mulch. Looks a bit rough and ready at the minute, but it will do the job, suppressing the weeds, keeping the moisture in, feeding the soil, and once the plants come up, it'll be a nice little backdrop, the darker of the actual mulch against the nice green of the plants and the flowers, etc. Nice one. Right, so here we have a bit of a bonus tip. So this is not so much, it is old growth, this is last year's growth. This is actually a dogwood that is grown from a cutting that I took off a mother tree a couple of years ago. So look at beautiful, and obviously the reason I want it for the beautiful red branches in the winter time more than anything else. and it's growing on nicely now. It's a bit straggly looking here, so what I want to do is make it cut it back a bit, prune it down so that we have some nice new growth next year. That'll be that beautiful red as well. But if I do that, which is what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut it down to just above a bud, and this one. And what I'm also going to do, let me just cut this one. These are a bit small, but they should work anyway. And this one. So I've cut the tops at these just above a bud, and obviously I need to cut this one back, oh, made a mistake here, to just below a bud. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these straight in the ground. Put them over here. Just plant them straight in, and I'm going to leave them now. And hopefully they will strike this year, and then I'll have another 2 plants. Beautiful. Cheap as chips out, isn't it? There we go. Now we've got it down nice and low, and we'll have some new branches coming up this year, and then again this winter coming they'll have that brilliant red stalks that will come out nicely against the frost and the snow and give me some interest as I'm walking, touring around in the winter. So there we go, 5 tips, get you going on the spring going. The weather's warming up, even though it's not a particularly nice day today. There's a bit of blue sky over there. The weather's warming up, we can get out in the garden and really start to do some work to lay the foundations for a beautiful summer ahead. Job's a good one.